Good day everyone. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Before I begin my lecture, I would like to express my gratitude to the people behind the Loreto Macasiar SICAT Prize, the Philippine Social Science Council and the SICAT family, especially to Dr. Gerardo Sicat and to our benefactress, Ma'am Michelle Sicat Powell, to Executive Director Dr. Lourdes M. Portus, to Dr. Shirley N. Tita, Chairperson, Ma'am Wilhelmina C. Manyala, Treasurer of Board of Trustees, to Ms. Janelle A. Makuha, Management Officer, and to everyone that constitute the PSSC, especially to Sir Wilson, thank you po, and also to Jello and Anya, actually my former students. I am equally thankful to my thesis panel, my advisors, retired Professor Maria Bernadette Abrera and Professor Ross Costello, reader Professor Percival Almoro of the National Institute of Physics, and creative Professor Jesus Federico Tuting Hernandez of the Department of Linguistics. I'm also grateful to all my colleagues at the Department of History and at the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, to our Department Chair, Professor Roel Pagunsan, and to our Dean, Professor Rutlos Del Rigo, to my friends and family, thank you. Also, I would like to greet my mama, who is celebrating her birthday today, April 11. She doesn't have an Aries personality though. Being nonchalant, she's more of a Taurus. I would like to begin my presentation with the turning points I chose for my periodization. Next slide, please. Not only for its palindromic effect. That point would be easy to justify. 1958 was the year when President Carlos P. Garcia signed the Science Act. It was also the year when Roman Quintanar, one of the first graduates of BS Physics in the University of the Philippines, became the director of the Philippine Weather Bureau. 3 years before, an important Tagalog esoteric text, Karunungan ng Diyos by Menencio T. Sabino, was seen in print in 1955. This text was a compilation of stories and prayers embraced and passed orally by the curanderos or faith healers and albularios or herbalists, and some of the stories include alternative perspectives on how the universe and its beings came to be. But why 1859? The commonplace historical event would be the return of the Jesuits to the Philippines. The Jesuits would be the one responsible for the establishment of the Observatorio del Ateneo Municipal in 1865, later becoming Observatorio Meteorologico de Manila in 1884, as well as the Christian missions in the Pulangi Valley that would later result to the documentation of the Maguindanon language through word lists appended to books of biblical narratives and catechism, and later dictionarios or dictionaries. But going beyond the legacies of the Jesuits, I also have chosen 1859 not because of the occurrence of political events, nor the establishment of important institutions. I chose 1859 because of a local event that can be considered as a reflection of ongoing phenomenon in the progress of astronomical knowledge. Next slide, please. On April 5, 1859, 9 days before the Jesuit return, a meteorite sighting occurred in Mexico, Pampanga. A few minutes before 5 in the afternoon, townspeople heard a series of sounds resembling cannon or rifle shots. A strip of smoke cut above the town, and as the townspeople, most of them working as palay threshers, traced the smoke, they found the meteorite or aerolito, a large stone, still smoking and very hot. A report was made by the gobernadorcillo or municipal mayor and signed by local witnesses. This curious sighting captured the attention of the Manila-based bi-monthly Ilustración Filipina. Seen in print on June 1, 1859, what's interesting about the news is the framing of the unnamed news writer. Placed under scientific part or parte scientifica, the news begins with a scientific explanation of aerolitos or meteorites. Aerolitos came from the Greek words aer or air and lithos stone. Sometimes called lightning stones or piedras de rayo, falling stones from sky or the moon, or caídas del cielo or de la luna, or meteoric stones, piedras meteoricas. They are quote-unquote stones or compact masses from the atmosphere that fell into the earth. Iron, nickel, silica, magnesium, sulfur, and other elements generally constitute an aerolito. The reporter also mentioned an English chemist who wrote a chronological account of meteorites, and the list identified meteorites housed in scientific establishments in Colmar, France, Verona, Italy, Brazil, and Bilberg, with weight ranging from 200 to 14,000 pounds. Before going to the quote-unquote fact that has placed the pen in our hands, or in Spanish, hecho que ha puesto la pluma en nuestras manos, that is the Pampanga sighting, the reporter further discussed the 4 theories that explain the formation of meteorites, one of which was proposed by the French scholar and polymath Pierre-Simon Marquis de Laplace, or Monsieur Laplace. The report ends by saying that, quote-unquote, such a curious object is destined by the Superior Gobierno to the Museo de Historia Natural de Madrid. Next slide, please. In recent news, on February 23, 2025, the Pampanga meteorite, dubbed by news writers as the first Philippine meteorite, is currently on display in a mall in Pasig, along with the Paitan meteorite. The return of the meteorite was made possible by the Philippine Meteorite Repatriation Team. Here we can see how the sighting, accompanied by the explanation, was quote-unquote modernly scientified. Aerolitos were defined etymologically and scientifically, i.e. its physical nature and structure. Aerolitos were subjected to international measurements, i.e. the libras or pounds, and scientists like Laplace and an English chemist, un químico inglés, and scientific establishments were cited. This modern scientification can be juxtaposed with the pre- and proto-modern. Meteors were considered spirits, if not spirited, and the phenomenon is generally explained through religio-cultural means. The reporter, nonetheless, held in contempt the non-modern mind, calling those who possessed it, quote-unquote, the man estranged from science, or el hombre extraño a la ciencia. Given this story, we now have an idea of what modern is. To further specify, modernity occurred in Western astronomy through a so-called paradigm shift. Next slide, please. That is the transition from the Earth-centered or geocentric system of the universe to the Sun-centered or heliocentric system. The Earth-centered system can be traced back to the ideas of Aristotle, especially in a compilation of his lectures titled Physics. Next slide, please. Ptolemy, an Alexandrian astronomer and mathematician, provided mathematical proofs that supported the geocentric theory through his work Mathematica Syntaxis, or Mathematical Composition, circa 150 CE. By the 16th and 17th centuries, developments in science paved the way to the replacement of the model. We know the familiar names: Nicolaus Copernicus, who wrote his On the Revolution of Celestial Spheres, 1543, which was followed by Galileo Galilei and his controversial Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems, published 1632. Next slide. In the Philippines, we have a different set of paradigms. I label this as pre-modern, proto-modern, and modern. Pre-modern pertains to the indigenous Austronesian astronomy that can be traced as far back as 3500 BCE. Proto-modern, therefore, mediates the pre-modern to modern. Among the Philippine communities, the existence of proto-modern astronomy implies linguistic contact and socio-cultural interaction with Sanskrit, Arabic, and Malay speakers. Moreover, it shows the Philippine reception of foreign astronomical knowledge and practices before the advent of Euro-American colonialism. Next slide, please. Pre-modern astronomy is already well studied, thanks to the important contributions of the historian Dante L. Ambrosio. His works were best represented by the book Palatik at Astronomia Kalangitan sa Kabihasnang Pilipino, which was based on his PhD dissertation in history. To add to Ambrosio, I look into the so-called proto-modern paradigm. Aside from the Sanskrit and Arabic words for heaven, hell, deity, spirit, eclipse, Milky Way, comet, fixed star, and planets, currently used among the Philippine communities, there were also primary sources that attest to the said paradigm. Next slide, please. One would be the 10th century Laguna copper plate inscription, which uses the word Jyotisha, a Sanskrit word, meaning astral science or astrologer. The term was used to establish the time of the document, which was a receipt of debt acquittal. Next slide, please. Another source appeared in the 19th century with the involvement, again, of the Jesuits. In 1888, an unnamed Jesuit missionary, or in Spanish, un padre misionero de la Compañía de Jesús, published the Compendio de Historia Universal desde la creación del mundo hasta la venida de Jesucristo. It tells the usual biblical story from the creation to the time of Jesus, and it was written in 3 forms. In Spanish, using the Romanized alphabet, in Maguindanon, using the Romanized alphabet, and in Jawi, possibly in Maguindanon. Important in this text is the appended Breve Vocabulario en Castellano y Moro Maguindanao, a short word list in Spanish and Maguindanon. Historian Isagani R. Medina posits that the Compendio y Breve Vocabulario was written by Jacinto Juan Marti, despite notarial anonymity. Serving as the local superior from 1874 till his death in 1897, Juan Marti was instrumental for the Rio de Grande mission centered in Tamuntaka, Cotabato, now in Cotabato City. Next slide, please. Here we can see Maguindanon words that reflect proto-modern or even modern astronomical knowledge. We have words for comets, fixed stars, and planets or wandering stars. Moreover, they have Arabic equivalents for the planet names, which are entirely absent in the pre-modern Austronesian astronomy. So next slide. So here are the planet names in Maguindanon, and we can see how it is the same with the Arabic, except the last one for Uranus, which is Hertzl, maybe because of the discoverer of the planet, William Herschel. Next slide. The century when the Jesuits returned to the Philippines, as well as the rebirth of Christian missions in Mindanao, is also a century of many important events. 19th century is often described as the long 19th century. In Spain, the Napoleonic attacks brought about challenges to the monarchy, and conversely encouraged liberalism that culminated in the creation of the Cadiz Constitution of 1812. Meanwhile, the Mexicans were already revolting until they gained their independence in 1821. The Carlist Wars from 1833 to 1876 further plagued the Spanish leadership. In the Philippines, one of the main sources of revenues of the colonial treasury, the galleon trade, was greatly affected by the alternative trading systems established by the Spanish king himself, as well as the long Mexican War of Independence. In 1815, the last galleon sailed, and by 1834, Manila opened itself to international trade, followed by other ports such as Iloilo, Suwal, and Zamboanga in 1855, Cebu in 1860, and Legazpi and Tacloban in 1872. By 1863, an important decree was promulgated by Queen Regent Maria, the Education Decree of 1863. Compulsory primary education for boys and girls was mandated. Furthermore, in 1869, the Suez Canal was built, which made faster not only the transport of goods and people, but also the transmission of ideas, especially the Enlightenment and liberal ideas from Europe. Next slide. The political and socio-economic events of the 19th century mirrored the specific events in the institutionalization of modern astronomy in the Philippines. After the formation of the Cadiz Constitution, the Spanish Cortes outlined projects to improve the public instruction in the Philippines, such as the creation of quote-unquote special schools of commerce, astronomy, and navigation. The downfall of the liberals in 1823 resulted to the abortion of such projects. Nonetheless, the Escuela Nautica de Manila opened on April 5, 1820, being the first and only scientific institution in the colony at that time. This school for pilots includes subjects like cosmography, navigation, nautical astronomy, geography, and astronomy. By the time the Education Decree of 1863 was promulgated, next slide, subjects include geography, which contains astronomical, physical, and political aspects. An 1845 textbook by a Valladolid professor became a favorite import to teach subjects including geography. Next slide, please. By the last decade of the 19th century, geography books became more localized. In 1896, Imprenta del Colegio de Santo Tomas in Manila published the book Lecciones de Geografía Universal y Particular de España y Filipinas by Jose Noval, OP. These books were already teaching the heliocentric system of the universe. So if you know the P. Noval, so that's Patro Noval, Jose Noval. Aside from the educational progress in terms of geography and astronomy, it was also in the 19th century that one would see an institution devoted to meteorology and astronomy. So next slide. The Manila Observatory. Founded within the auspices of the Jesuits, it was told that, to quote, the first and primary motive was the desire for the advancement of science in general and the progress of meteorological science in particular, according to Father James Hennessy. It started in 1865 within Ateneo Municipal until it became a state-sponsored institution in 1884. By 1899, it would create its astronomical division, which added up to the already existing branches, meteorological, seismic, and magnetic branches. Although the primary innovator of the institution, Padre Federico Faura, next slide please, breathed his last in 1897, we can still connect the establishment of the astronomical branch to his efforts in astronomy, such as the solar eclipse observation in Celebes in 1868. For the astronomical branch, they procured telescopes such as the 19-inch telescope ordered in Germany as early as 1890. Faura's successor, Jose Alque, also invented a zenith telescope. The astronomical branch of the Manila Observatory, however, was created in a time between the times. From 1896 to 1898, the revolution carried out by the Katipuneros went on, and in 1898 sparked the Spanish-American War. Knowing the importance of scientific studies in relation to policy making, the Americans expressed favor to the institution. In 1899, the same year when the Philippine-American War started, the construction of the astronomical building was finished. In 1901, the Philippine Weather Bureau was established through the Philippine Commission Act No. 131. Manila Observatory became its central office. From 1901 to 1948, its directorship was held by two Spanish-born Jesuit scientists, Jose Alque from 1901 to 1926, and Miguel Selga from 1927 to 1948. In terms of employment, Filipinos occupied all the posts in the Bureau except for the executive positions. after the enactment of the Philippine Autonomy Act, or the Jones Law in 1916, what can be considered as a way to further equip Filipino Bureau employees was to send them to the United States for requisite advanced training. By 1925, due to failing health, Father Alge stepped down from his post and was succeeded by Miguel Selga. Just like Father Alge, Selga underwent astronomical studies and training, specifically in the Western and Eastern observatories. He also taught astronomy subjects in the University of the Philippines. Next slide, please. One important engagement of the Manila Observatory scientists and foreign astronomers happened to an astronomical event, the solar eclipse of May 9, 1929. Foreign parties went to the Philippines to observe the eclipse. The U.S. Naval Observatory Expedition in Lapus, Iloilo, the English Expedition at La Paz, Iloilo, and the Bergedorf Expedition of Hamburg Sternwarte in Sogod City. The Philippine Weather Bureau also sent two expeditions. One was headed by Father Depperman, joining the Hamburg party in Sogod, Cebu, while the other was headed by Father Selga in the football field of the Colegio de San Agustin in Iloilo. These expeditions also interacted with Professor Stetson of Harvard and Professor Johnson of Institute of Technology of Southern California, whose parties stayed briefly in Manila before going to Sumatra. Next slide, please. Professor Edward R. Hyde, Dean of the UP College of Engineering, wrote the impressions of the visiting astronomers in July 1929 issue of the Philippine Magazine. This personal account veered away from the scientific technicalities. Rather, it showed the human side of visiting scientists whom Dean Hyde deemed as quote-unquote intellectual aristocrats. With Professor Alejandro Melchor, yung engineering building of Melchor Hall, Dean Hyde accompanied Dr. Bate and Mr. Schmidt of the Hamburg party. Interestingly, the British astronomer Reginald Lawson Waterfield saw the event as a way to revisit and test the general theory of relativity by Albert Einstein. The destruction of the Manila Observatory during the liberation of Manila in 1945 and the post-war government reorganization resulted in the observatory's separation from state service and thus privatization. The observatory transferred to Mirador, Baguio in 1951. Meanwhile, the Philippine Weather Bureau retained the task that involved meteorological, astronomical, and magnetic research. It was reestablished on July 25, 1945 with Edelberto Parulan as the officer in charge, to be replaced in November by Casimiro Del Rosario. Del Rosario, a faculty member of the UP Department of Physics, later became the director. On August 5, 1958, the Garcia administration appointed Roman Quintana as the Bureau Director. Next slide. In 1972, the Philippine Weather Bureau was reorganized into the Philippine Atmospheric Geophysical Astronomical Service Administration, or PAGASA. The late Philippinization of the Weather Bureau made me think about a statement by Jose Rizal, registered through an anonymous narrator in his novel El Filibusterismo. In the chapter, A Class in Physics, he said, some 250 students annually studied this course, and whether by apathy, indolence, limited capacity of the Indio, or some other ethnological or inconceivable reason, up to now there has not flourished a Lavoisier, a Secchi, nor a Tyndall, even in miniature, in the Malay Filipino race. In the American and post-American period, as the list of Filipino physicians, pharmacists, agriculturists, chemists, and engineers got longer, we would see the physics graduates that would hold position as astronomers and meteorologists only after the war. With Casimiro Del Rosario and Roman Quintana, the Weather Bureau directors in 1945 and 1958 respectively. It was only through these two Cebuanos during the Third Republic that we would have at last what we may call, as Rizal would say, our own Angelo Secchi and John Tyndall. Does it mean that modern astronomical knowledge had barely touched the surface of Filipino mind? Are the questions on the nature of things, cosmos and existence, questions that astronomy and astrophysics attempt to answer insignificant to Filipinos? To agree is perhaps to bark at the wrong tree. By looking at an alternative set of sources, specifically those that deal with vernacularization and appropriation, we can see that these issues still figure, although in different light. Next slide, please. I define vernacularization as the entry of knowledge, things, and practices into a community through vernacular languages. The texts that deal with vernacularized astronomical knowledge are plenty. We can categorize them into two. One, those that vernacularize updated knowledge, and those that vernacularize outdated knowledge. For the first category, next slide please, we can cite Sofronio Calderon's Pagtuklas sa Ating Lupain, 1908, and Mamerto Paglinawan's Bulat Lupang Tagalog, 1930. These two were active in Tagalogizing foreign concepts. One of the concepts they vernacularized is geography or geografía, to be translated as Bulat Lupa. Calderon defines Bulat Lupa as the science that speaks of the conditions in Earth, which is a great guide nowadays for people and their ways of life. Paglinawan, however, did not provide a definition, perhaps assuming that Bulat Lupa, being synonymous to geography or geografía, is already understandable. Nonetheless, he provided a list of astronomical terms and names in Tagalog, although some of them are based in Spanish. Next slide, please. So here are some of the examples. So we have Tanglao, Pag-ikit, and others. In other pages, he would say that the speed of light is humigit kumulang sa 300,000 kilometro sa isang segundo lamang. A rotation lasts 25 araw at 8 oras. A revolution or paglilipat has the speed of 656,000 kilometro sa isang araw na patungo sa kabigwinan ni Hercules. And a year takes 365 araw, 5 oras, 48 sandali or minuto, at 47 pintik o segundo. Now let us look at the second category, those that vernacularize outdated knowledge. Next slide, please. These are composed mainly of astrology books. In Tagalog, we can cite two important authors, Rosendo Ignacio and Honorio M. Lopez. Rosendo Ignacio is a writer, educator, language scholar, and lawyer who published works in Tagalog, Spanish, and English. Ignacio's Aklat ng Karunungan o Mga Lihim ng Kalikasan, sinipi sa mga libro de Ciencias, 1921, is covered with an illustration of the zodiac man, shown here, or Homo Signorum, whose body parts have corresponding zodiac signs. So sometimes this is used for medical astrology. One chapter deals with the interpretation of comets and their effects to the society, as seen in this series of tables. So first table, so you have the comet's color and form, then the celestial body and the meaning. So usually the meanings would be negative. Okay, that of kings, famine, wars, etc. Next slide, please. So for other bodies or for other color and form, and next slide. That's the last one. The only positive one would be the one corresponding to moon, okay? Which means prosperity in life. Another chapter deals with the interpretation of the zodiac, in Tagalog, zodiac. Here, Ignacio began with an explanation of the zodiac signs, followed by a categorization of planets, including the sun and the moon, based on which house or sign they belong. Next slide, please. So you have these planets, then you have the house or sign corresponding to the planets. Then it proceeds to define the zodiac signs, their features and nature, and the character and fate of boys and girls born in the period. In another chapter, Ignacio discussed the planets, the form and the state of the planet, the reading of its signs, the influence it gives to those under its domain, the human behavior it induces, and the interests and activities of people associated with the planet. However, in every ending of a planet's description, next slide please, there are scientific measurements provided, which were sourced from Alfragano or Alfraganus, who lived in 800 to 870 CE, a 9th century Arab or Persian astronomer that worked under the patronage of the Abbasids. Next slide please. Honorio M. Lopez is a writer, publisher, politician, and occultist. He participated in the 1896 revolution and later served as the Councilor of Manila. Together with his wife, Doña Filipa Crisostomo, Lopez created the almanac calendar, the Masalang Kalendaryong Tagalog, since 1898, which continues to be published up to this day. His most popular work, Aklat na Ginto, 1918, collates various knowledges or duno on self-cure, hunting wild and venomous animals, hypnotism, magnetism, yoga, and psychic magic. Aklat na Ginto reached 7 reprints by 1962. However, Lopez did not include in this work the astrological knowledge because he still needed more books to consult, and the knowledge too would take years to learn. Lopez's work on astrology would come later through the book Lunaryo na Kapalaran sa Pag-asawa at Paghanap ng Mapalad na Mga Kasama, possibly published in 1950 and had its third printing by 1962. Here we can see vernacularized astronomical terms and zodiac categories, as seen in the next slide. So there are some words again that were vernacularized. If we are to compare the zodiac terms in Tagalog, Visayan, and Ilocano, the Tagalogs would insist the Tagalog equivalents rather than the Spanish ones, which are apparent in Ilocano and Visayan. Next slide. So as compared here, so Ignacio and Lopez's work were Tagalog. The others, Porras is I think Iligaynon, Alfor is Cebuano, and Gibnata is Ilocano. Contrary to the other Tagalogs, Trinidad maintained the Spanish terms. However, from these samples in Tagalog, we can say that Ignacio and Lopez merely transplanted foreign knowledges into the Tagalog vernacular. As I look into Visayan astrological books, some practices were carried out similarly, although local knowledges were also incorporated. See for instance Signosan, Nativitate, Domine Nostri Jesu Christi, 1919, authored by Mansueto Porras. Published by La Panayana in Pasig, Iloilo, the book contains a mix of chronologies, folklore, and astronomical information. Next slide please. Here we can see local months which were also mentioned in Miguel de Loarca's Relación de las Islas Filipinas in 1582. Although Porras's months were more complete than Loarca's. These months were to be seen as rough equivalents to Gregorian months, since they should be situated in the agricultural practices of the early Visayans. Next slide. Moreover, the sense of time is also defined by the movement of the Bakunawa. According to the Cebuano historian Basil Mujares, the celestial Bakunawa shifts direction every calendar year, counterclockwise to 4 90-degree movements. There are ritual specialists who can mark as many as 16 directions of fortune and misfortune based on the position of the Bakunawa. Next slide, please. So here are the positions. Since the serpent broadcasts evil and calamity from the mouth, one must avoid the direction of its venomous breath in matters like travel, trade, and marriage. Knowledge of the Bakunawa's position is most commonly applied in house construction, since it guides the decision on when to build, where the first post hole is dug, and where the staircase should face. For house dwellers, such decisions can spell the difference between fortune and misfortune, and death and sickness, or joy and honor in the family. Aside from the Signosan by Porras, next slide please, the discussion on the Boconawa is also a regular feature in the Almanaque Panayanon of the La Panayana Publishing House. These deviations from foreign sources and conversely an assertion of the local were absent in Tagalog astrology books. In addition, another pamphlet, Karaang Napta, Sumala sa Sukit sa Karaang Mga Tao, 1950 by the Cebuano writer Brigido B. Alfar, had a different zodiac system. So, next slide please. Instead of season-based, Alfar's zodiac system is day-based. Thus, my mother's zodiac is not Aries because April 11 falls under Leo. And actually, I'm a Leo. Okay. A third way beyond these vernacularizations of updated and outdated knowledges can also be posed. This is the invention of terms and names through the vernacular. This is apparent in the case of Artemio Ricarte. Next slide please. Who created his Lilo or Mapa ng Langit in July 1930. As told by Dante Ambrosio, Ricarte was in Yokohama, Japan when he named the constellations after the Filipinos. Because of his location, he only saw the constellations at the northern part of the sky. God Tamblot or Cassiopeia is named after Tamblot, who was one of the Babaylan who revolted against the Spaniards in 1600s. God Dandan or Perseus is from the father Pedro Dandan, a revolutionary priest in the 1896 revolution. God Panyong or Draco is named after Epifanio de los Santos. Poncrisville or Cygnus combines the name of Mariano Ponce, Jose Rizal, and Marcelo del Pilar. Bontipla or Lira combines the names of the first triangle in Katipunan, Andres Bonifacio, Ladislao Diwa, and Teodoro Plata. Pinkian or Ursa Minor is from Emilio Jacinto's Nom de Guerre, while God May Pag-asa or Ursa Mayor is from Andres Bonifacio's. Above mentions are constellations. For the bright stars in the northern sky, Ricarte honored Jacinto, Rizal, and Del Pilar. Utak Jacinto for Polaris, the North Star in the Ursa Minor constellation, God Rizal for Vega in the Lira constellation, and God Plaridel from Del Pilar's Nom de Blue for Deneb in Cygnus constellation. What Ricarte did could also be considered as appropriation, the renaming of stars to localize and nationalize them. Next slide, please. As I look into other sources, what I observe is that the practice of appropriation was largely apparent in religious debates. We may find at the heart of seemingly contradictory domains of science and religion the problem, quote-unquote, of cosmology, as quoted by Karl Popper. Since the ancient times, religious systems have been accommodating the human tendency to know the nature and truth behind the existence of oneself and the world. Corresponding to the need for an understandable and convincing metaphysics, religion has long provided the symbol, the myth, and the rite that express a complex system of coherent affirmations about the ultimate reality of things. Through their modern forms, philosophy and science gradually competed with religious systems and institutions in answering ontological and cosmological questions. From the Copernican revolution, buttressed by the career of Galileo and Newton, important developments in physics and astronomy led to the rethinking of nature, being, and reality. By the 20th century, a revolution in physics led to its transition from being classical to modern. In the grand scale of things, Albert Einstein championed an alternative view over the classical Newtonian mechanics through his special and general theories of relativity. Meanwhile, Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg has been wrestling with the God of small things, developing the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which was initiated by Max Planck at the turn of the century. Perhaps it is in this context of scientific progress and secularization of knowledge that we would recontextualize Nietzsche's death and murder of God. The approaches and methods of science, rather than theology, became a more favorable way to explain and understand the origin and nature of things, which we deem real and true through thought, language, and experience. In the Philippines, the same struggle, despite varying local conditions, also occurred. The downfall of the Spaniards in the end of the 19th century also paved the way for perspectives that were alternative to those espoused by the Roman Catholic Church. Rooting in the martyrdom of the Gomburza in 1872, as well as the other heroes like Rizal and Bonifacio, the Iglesia Filipina Independiente was founded in 1902. Its leaders would be Isabelo de los Reyes, the well-known journalist and folklorist from Ilocos, and Gregorio Aguipay, who would be the first Obispo Maximo. Along the rise of the Philippine Independent Church were the various Protestant churches. Needless to say was the continuous patronage to spiritual leaders and mystics, whose followers were long denigrated as cults. For the discourses brought about by such democratization of belief systems since the early 20th century, let me confine my discussion to three sources. Next slide. The first would be ang kasaysayan ng tatlong personas hinago sa misteryo prinsipal ng isang matuwaing dumala sa wikang Tagalog, 1926, written by an anonymous poet. Part of this long poem describes the layers of heavens, some of which are quantified using local units of measurement. The poet managed to insert scientific information despite the poetic strictures of an awit. This insertion is perhaps a strategy to recast the religious text with scientific validity to make it truthful. Next slide, please. With Earth or Luba being the reference point, the text adopted a geocentric perspectives. The units of measurement used are legua, laksa, yuta, angaw-angaw, and bahala, as we have seen already in Paglinawan's book. We may presume that the poet was probably a Catholic believer who knew the text called Misterio Principal. The unmeasured spaces go beyond the limits of Copernicus's fixed stars, and even the primer movit or prime mover, which can be surmised in some of the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas. So this is the one that can be measured. The next slide, please. So here are the unmeasurable layers. The knowledge used by this poet, however, is outdated. It's subscribed to the Ptolemaic rather than Copernican cosmology. We can compare this to Father Aguipay's statements in the text Novenary of the Motherland, also in 1926. Next slide. Especially in the creation story. A common convert since the Spanish times would be familiar about how the Christian God created light, time, the universe, the world, and all the beings in the world. In the colonial society exposed to the Passion text, especially the Passion Genesis, one would hear about the creation of sun, moon, and stars on Wednesday, as told by the following passages. No? Sorry. When the Bible was translated into Tagalog in 1905, the Tagalogs learned about the full details of these events according to the original scriptures, as written in Genesis 1:13 to 19. In response to the Genesis story, Father Aguipay used modern science to criticize the Genesis story. Father Aguipay boldly asserted the evolutionist theory of learned men, which is based on many details and scientific proofs, is more credible than the biblical legend that God formed man from clay and then animated him with his breath, since such things has never been seen, while we see cases of transformation and the rise of new varieties of plants and animals every day, simply by crossbreeding by men who understand the matter, or by pure chance. To prove his point, Father Aguipay also cited scientists like Charles Darwin, Ernst Haeckel, Charles Lyell, Gustav Bischoff, James Dwight Dana, Louis Agassiz, and Lord Kelvin. Related to this and somehow contrary to is Melencio P. Sabino's Karunungan ng Diyos, 1955. Next slide. Sabino is known for writings on secret knowledge that perhaps were already in use by spiritualists and healers. Sabino was told to be the founder of the group called Agnus Dei. Karunungan ng Diyos is an expanded version of an earlier book, Sekreto, Mga Lihim na Pangalan at Lihim na Karunungan, published 1950. It includes myths before the act of creation, and through these pre-Genesis stories, we would learn how God would think and act. Time is non-linear, as shown in God's creation of hell, even before the revolt of Lucifer and the archangels, the birth of Bulaklak or flower, who would later become Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, the creation of spirits who held the luminaries at the either edge of the world, who visited the crucified Christ at the Calvary, who would later rebel against God, and who aided God in making the cosmos. Perhaps the interesting figures here are the elderly pair, next slide please, Madak and Abonatak, who are tasked to hold the universe together. It is through their roles that we would learn about the ends of the earth, or its lid or crust, and beyond it, the sun and moon and their sources of light, something that is left unexplained in the traditional Genesis. Through these creation stories, we can think of two forms of narratives adopted by religious institutions and individuals. One showcasing the best of both, if not all, possible worlds, and the other, the best of lone possible world. The Anglican cosmogony exhibits the best of both worlds type. They try to combine the Judeo-Christian tradition and the updated view from modern science. In the Novenary of the Motherland, Aglipay rejected the Judeo-Christian Genesis. They substituted the recent discovery in astronomy and astrophysics to explain how God labored in His laboratory, that is, this earth and the heavens. Meanwhile, the esoteric individuals and groups that adhered to the secret knowledge textualized by Sabino in the 1950s subscribed to the best of lone possible world type. Instead of combining different worlds, thus showing range and difference, they maintained the traditional Judeo-Christian Genesis. Showing depth and singularity, the gaps of the creation story were filled with more creation stories that belong to the same realm. Next slide. To conclude, my study is a humble attempt to situate Filipino interest and efforts in astronomy, physics, and astrophysics in our own historical timeline. The perceived aspects of such development, institutionalization, vernacularization, and appropriation, try to revolve around a specific foundational insight or Grundeinsicht. That is how Filipinos made sense of their world in relation to themselves. These labors on meaning-making are not entirely individualistic, for their tools, i.e. science and technology, appeared along with societal interest and function. Astronomical and astrological knowledge contains layers of development and fields of use, from practical, everyday activities to the general scientific understanding of the cosmos to the quest for the existential meaning of life. This history of Filipino reception and appropriation of modern astronomical knowledge is thus a portrait of Filipinos as quote-unquote beings in the world. Thank you very much.